Welcome back. I hope you found information on your badges useful and met interesting people during the coffee break. I know that Robert Selek left his laptop, but he can find it at the registration desk. And now, as we are entering this room, I would like that all of you stand up. Great. Now the task is for you to look around and find someone you do not know yet. Yes. Great. And I give you 1 minute to present you to this person, or if you talk very fast, you can present to 2 people. So 1 minute to present yourself to the people that surround you in this plenary hall. Great, the time is over. The time is over. You can take your seats now, please. Great. For the ones who are chatting, important information, and for the ones who stopped, important information is that there will be more networking opportunities today during the whole afternoon, and I will present those a little bit later. It's really nice to see and to hear you chatting. But now attention is to me. We all are back here in this hall, as this session, our second session, is about the second call. And in this session, we will give you an overview of the call and will give you some tips on how to prepare a successful project application. This morning, you already heard that Interreg Euro program last year celebrated 20 years. And now I will be inviting on the stage my 2 dear colleagues who are with the program, who are with the Interreg Europe for 20 years. And it is Petra Geithner, our head of the Finance and Audit Unit. Warm applause, Petra. And my second speaker is Nicolas Sanger, who is a head of the project unit. Hello, Petra.
Hello, Irma. Hello, everyone.
Hello, Nico.
Hello, Irma.
My first question to you, how does it feel to be for 20 years with the Interreg Europe program?
Well, feels like yesterday, but I think also it's very motivating to work with such a large variety of people every day, so still feels good.
To be honest, it reminds me of a song. It's been 20 years ago today, from my favorite band. People may know, I will not mention it. But more seriously, as Petra, it feels like yesterday. So I don't have the feeling it's 20 years, which I think is a good sign, because we're still having fun, we are still learning on a day-to-day basis. So we are very happy to be there for 20 years, I would say.
Yes, big applause to you both. So now we are ready to start, and in the previous session we heard about Interreg Europe program, but just to recap, Petra, could you remind us what are the key principles of the Interreg Europe program and what indeed is relevant from those principles in the context of the second call?
I think what's important for the people here that are interested in the second call to know is how much budget is actually left. So the program budget is 379 million, but after the commitment of the first call, 230 million are still left. And the monitoring committee decided to allocate approximately 130 million in the second call. Then I think it's also important to know that all of the 6 topics are open, so there are no particular restrictions. And of course, it's cooperation which should have geographical coverage as wide as possible, so the 29 countries can be involved.
Thank you, Petra, for explaining this. Before this session started, before the coffee break, I encourage all of you to send questions about the second call, and just to tell you that we will look to those questions. But the first, it's me who is asking questions, my speakers, and the second question goes to Nico. Our colleagues already talked about the objective of the program. Could you turn this objective and explain what does it mean to project?
Yes, indeed. I think Razan explained this ambitious objective of improving regional development policies. For the project, we can say that it's fully translated into the project objective. And from that perspective, you can say that the program is very prescriptive. Because if you're interested in a project, you will have to describe one main policy per region. We call them policy instrument. And the program will predefine the objective for you. The aim of your project will be to improve the implementation, the development, the design of these policy improvements. So there's no choice in a way, it's a bit top-down. You may wonder what we mean by policies, by a policy instrument. I think we can say the notion is quite open in our program. I think Estelle has already mentioned the different levels, local level, regional level, national levels. This can be represented in the projects. And if you're a public authorities, it sounds very obvious what is a policy or what is a policy instrument. I don't know, I can give, for instance, the example of a low-carbon strategy of a regional council or the urban mobility plan of a city. These are typically the kind of policy instruments we got in our projects. If you still wonder what we mean, the best way would be perhaps to look at our 258 projects. They are still available on our website. And you will see for each of these projects what are the policy instruments they would like to improve. I think that's the best way for you to discover the variety of policies we can address. The last thing I wanted to say about this is that there's still another requirement in this regard, is that in each project, at least one region has to focus on what we call the Investment for Jobs and Growth Goal program, meaning the ERDF, ESF program implemented in this region. This is a bit unique in Interreg Europe. We are part of the cohesion policy. And the regulation asks us also to help the managing authorities to better improve the implementation of their structural fund programs. And you see these requirements reflected in this element that if you have 8 regions, 7 regions, then 7 policy instruments, at least one needs to be an operational program, ERDF, ESF program.
We get really a lot of questions about eligibility, and I could also see on the slide that there are questions, can universities, NGOs participate in the program? So Petra, could you tell us who can participate in the Interreg Europe program?
Okay. First of all, and that's of course the main target group of the program, there are the public authorities, but it's also possible for public law bodies to become involved. And then there are also the private non-profit bodies that can participate. However, in the latter case, they cannot be the lead partners of the projects. And why private non-profit bodies? Because in some countries we know that also chambers of commerce sometimes have rather a private status than a public status, and we want them, of course, also to be involved. But it has always to be borne in mind that, of course, the policy responsible authority has to be there, and in most cases it's the public authority itself.
So now, as we know who can be involved in the project, Nico, could you tell us what kind of partners should be involved in a project?
Yes, of course. I think Petra has stolen my words already. She mentioned
Sorry.
the policy responsible authority.
We cannot say it often enough.
Yes,
I think.
exactly. Exactly. No, if you look seriously, if you look at the program objective to improve policies, if you want to be serious with this objective, our 20 years of experience in interregional cooperation show us that you need to have the policymakers on board. It makes a huge difference. So in this program, we impose that the policy responsible authority is involved. And the policy responsible authority is, for instance, in the two examples I gave before, the regional council in charge of the low carbon strategy, or the city in charge of the sustainable urban plan. They would have to be involved in the project. You may ask me how they should be involved in the project.
How?
Thank you, Irma. In the perfect world, in the ideal world, they should be partner. They should be directly partner. Is the best way to be fully committed to the project. Unfortunately, the reality is often more challenging than the theory. And for many reasons, different reasons, sometimes the policy responsible authority cannot be directly a partner. In such a case, it has to come as what we call, sorry for the jargon, associated policy authorities. Internally, we call it the golden stakeholder, let's say. It means that this organization will still appear in the application form. We'll have to provide a declaration, so a kind of official commitment to the project. And during the project implementation, we will monitor its involvement, whether or not it's involved in the project. At the end of the day, what is important is another requirement of the program. Out of all the regions, out of all the policy instruments, at least for half of them, the policy responsible authority must be a partner.
And is there something else we need to keep in mind about the partnership?
We are very demanding with the partnership, I'm afraid, because we have something that Petra also mentioned, the broad coverage of this program, the only Interreg program that is pan-European, having the 29 countries. So we have to, the partnership have to ensure a broad geographical coverage. We keep on repeating this for 20 years. And unfortunately, despite keeping repeating it, we received in previous programming periods a lot of projects that were in essence transnational. They were mainly with partners from the south of Europe, or from Central Europe, or from Baltic Sea regions. So we had to come with another requirements, unfortunately. We divided Europe in four areas that you see represented on the slide: west, east, north, and south. And the requirement for you would be to, in your partnership, you have at least to have one partner from each of this area. The second thing I would say on the geographical coverage, it was very interesting, the words that appear at the first polls. I see two words that for me strike me: diversity and cohesion. And what is important in this program is to be as diverse as possible, to enrich the exchange of experience. That's also the reason why we attach a lot of importance of mixing more advanced regions with less advanced regions. I know sometimes Swedish regions, Dutch regions are not very happy with this, I have to admit. But at the end of the day, when they do this, they still find it quite useful, because I think the enrichment is mutual. But you need to be careful to have these different levels of development represented in the partnership.
Thank you, Nico, for explaining this. I can see that on the slide, though, we have several questions that are related to what you just talked about. And indeed, someone from autonomous region is checking and willing to know, are they eligible and can join the program within the second call?
Of course, autonomous
Yes.
regions are more than welcome. Maybe this refers also to the geographical coverage, because the requirements I've just explained, there is one exception about it. You're not bound to these 4 areas in case at least 2 autonomous regions are involved. I may develop later on if people are interested, but this is to help autonomous regions even to work together, because they are so specific in their challenges. We had to be a bit more flexible on this rule, but autonomous regions are more than welcome in this program.
We could see that there are many universities in this audience, and they are asking, can universities participate as the partner and policy responsible authorities working on internal university policy?
Petra, do you want to say a word? I think that it's been 20 years I've been in this world. I always have this question. There was no event where I didn't have these questions. Universities are public bodies, I think, in most countries. We never face, Petra, let me know, we never face a case where a university was not eligible to Interreg Europe. But again, we would always make this distinction between eligible status and what Interreg Europe is about, the quality of the partnership. And the challenge for universities in our program, or research institutes or academics, is their link to the regional development policies, their responsibility in the regional development policies. And in most cases, there's a few exceptions, but in 95% of the cases, universities cannot be considered as policy responsible authorities. So they need, ideally, to come with the public authorities in the project.
A very interesting question reflected our future and expansion of the territory. If included in Interreg Europe, do you expect that collaboration with Moldova or
Western
Ukraine will be a requirement in the next goal, or will they be part of the South or East region? How it will be? Do you have any idea?
I think this is far too early to talk about it already. We first need to wait for the decision from the monitoring committee to open up the program, and then I think all the things will follow from that. And so I think after June there will be a lot of more news to share, and beginning of next year, then also these points will be clarified. I don't know.
Indeed, I think this session is specifically focused on the second call, and we will continue to present the key features of the second call. So I will continue then with the questions we have. What kind of issues projects can address, Nico? Maybe you could tell us.
Yes, I may be quite short on this one, because I think we have in the first session mentioned a lot. Razan explained very clearly what kind of subtopics you can find, or specific objectives you can find with each of these icons you see represented on the screen. I think what is the most important message for you is that we can be very prescriptive top-down on certain elements. We are fully bottom-up on these kind of things, meaning that behind these topics, more or less, any issues related to regional development is covered. This is obvious for the first 4 but even the last one, which is called governance, you can even exchange on non-thematic related elements. If you want to know the best practices in evaluating public policies, how you manage state aids, how procurement are managed, controls, whatever, you can even propose cooperation on this kind of governance topic. So the program has become extremely open, and I think this is a very good news for the people, for the applicant. The last thing maybe I would add is sometimes the confusion we have with Europe Closer to the Citizen. The title is slightly misleading. What is meant behind this is integrated territorial strategies, an opportunity for regions to exchange experience on this kind of strategies. So it's a bit indirectly related to Europe Closer to the Citizen, even if at the end it should help, of course, the citizen and the territories.
Yeah. I think that's very great about what is about Interreg Europe, that basically you can work on any topic in this programming period. And as we know this, Nico, could you tell us on what kind of activities are supported within the project?
Yes, that's another very important element, because Interreg Europe is a capitalization program, is a capacity building program, different words to describe this. And what does it mean? It means that you have to believe in networking and the exchanging of experiences, days like today, because this is at the heart of what Interreg Europe project should do. You have a few examples of the typical activities we have in our projects, and all this helps in identifying, analyzing, transferring the good practices that have been identified. Again, this should be at the heart of the project. It's learning by exchanging. However, it's not always enough to learn by exchanging. It's not only enough to meet, to discuss, to visit, to analyze the practices. Sometimes you need really to try yourself to see if it works in your region. So we have, under certain conditions, possibility for learning by doing, for doing pilot actions. I know we have a lot of questions on this sometimes, but you can also refer to our website where we have some examples of these pilot actions. This is also possible. This also increases the capacity of the people and organization, and it has to be to the benefit of the whole partnership at the end of the day, because what you do in your region, you can also learn what is happening there. Be careful with pilot action, it's possible, but at the end of the day, what remains at the heart of the project is the exchange of experience.
Okay, good to know. But could you tell us how does it work in practice? What is the duration of the project?
Yeah, another prescriptive element, perhaps, is that we have 4 years for all projects. It's really standardized. And of course, the most important is what we call the core years, the 3 years, where the exchange of experience takes place, where all these learning activities takes place. And the idea is that the regions, hopefully, at the end of the 3 years, they should achieve their objective, meaning what? They should have improved in a way or another the different policy instruments, the different policies addressed in the project. What is a bit unique in our program is that we keep on working with you, with the projects, because it's very interesting to see what's happening after the policy improvement. Sometimes if there are jobs created, if there are CO2 emissions saved. So we keep on having what we call the follow-up phase to see a bit the effect of these territorial changes, or in case a region didn't improve its policy at the end of the core phase, then a very light action plan has to be produced, and we will see in the follow-up phase whether or not this action plan is implemented.
Good. Now we know how long the projects last, and I think we can look what questions we receive via the Slido. And I can see some of them, and we'll read them. Someone is asking, do we have a project? We have a project idea that relates to several policy objectives. So how do I choose then?
We have to discuss to see exactly what is the issue at stake. I would be a bit careful with having several specific objectives tackled at the same level. If you, for instance, foster clusters in the solar energy issues, of course it touches a bit innovation, SME competitiveness, and also greener, because you are in the solar energy things. But at the end of the day, why are you doing this project? It's to foster the competitiveness of the SMEs, the core objective, or it's to develop the energy solar energy sources in your regions. You have to ask yourself the question, what is my core objective? And one of the things, one of the tips we give to the applicants to solve this question is to also look at what are the policy instruments they address, because then they will have to define which axis, which priority of this policy instrument, and very often it determines what is a specific objective they should apply for.
Yeah, that's a very good tip, I think you give.
Thank you.
And someone is also asking, are you planning to allocate specific budget amounts to each call? Topic?
Well,
sorry.
All the topics are open and there's no specific allocation, and well, there is an allocation in the program, 80, 20%, depending on topics. But what we have seen this morning also on the screen is that this follows what was a bit expected by the committee. So what's important, look what is your demand, bring forward the topics you want to address, and I think that should be the guiding principle to build a successful project, and all topics are open.
Do 50% of policies addressed have to be growth and jobs, the structural funds?
It's a very good question, because this used to be the requirement under the 2014-2020 period. The text of the regulation has been slightly changed for our program, and it's more flexible. So now it's not at all an obligation to have half of the policy instruments that are structural funds, investment for jobs and growth program. At least one should be. So I think it makes the life of the project also much easier.
For the pilot actions, how can we involve SMEs in this?
So I saw a question on SMEs also before. What we didn't say about the partnership requirements is that in each region you also have to create a stakeholder group. And if you work on issues like innovation, SME competitiveness, of course the private sector has to be involved. At the end of the day, they will be beneficiary of the measures even. So that's the first way you can involve the SMEs in your project, in the thinking, in the learning process. Then in the pilot actions, there may be possibility, indeed, to involve the SMEs. For instance, if you envisage a voucher, for instance, you want to try a voucher in your region. But then the question is always about the state aid rule. And to be honest, I'm not a specialist at all of this. I look at my colleague Petra for this kind of questions. That's where the limit is. But when you look at the size of our pilot actions, which are very reasonable, we rarely face issue with state aid. Petra, I don't know if you want to add anything.
If they are involved, it's an indirect involvement through the stakeholders, as Nico said. As you have seen on the slide previously, the eligible private partners are only the non-profit ones. So they are the only ones that could directly participate.
Okay, then we can take a next question. If a policy document is addressed in previous calls, can the same policy document be addressed again in this call?
Yes, it can be. It can be, and what happens in our projects is there are a number, especially the operational program, ERDF, ESF. It often happens that they are addressed by several projects, the same operational program.
And indeed, there was another question. Can the lead partner of the first call be a lead partner at the second call?
Why not? The only element is that, like in every Interreg program or funding program, we try to renew ourselves. It was so nice to see so many familiar faces. I feel as I come to the family today. But we want, as we saw, we want also to renew the regions, to involve new beneficiaries in our program. So you have an explanation in the manual that if you're coming back, if you are in several applications, it's better to justify why you're coming back.
Nico, what kind of projects do you expect in the field of Connect?
That's a very good question because I don't really know myself, to be honest. The Connect is a topic which was completely new for us, and it's related to E10 initiative. Most of it's related to E10, these famous transnational European networks to make connections, to improve mobility in Europe. And if your project is more or less related to this, or to make the links between these big networks, then it's fully relevant to this topic. If it's more generally about sustainable transport, using public transport, I think the greener Europe priority would fit also perfectly well to this kind of projects.
And the last question I will take, is it possible for more than one public national authority from the same member state to be beneficiary of the same project?
I'm not sure I get the question because beneficiary of the same project, I'm not sure what it means exactly. What is sure is that a national authority can be involved in several projects, of course, but in one single project, the national authority is there for a specific policy instrument, so it's beneficiary only once of the same project. But maybe we can further discuss later on about the question.
And now, time to talk about money, money, money. So we head to the questions about the finances. And Petra, can you tell us what are the co-financing rates of the Interreg Europe program?
According to the regulation, the maximum co-financing rate for the ERDF is 80%, and the monitoring committee decided to grant this maximum rate to the public authorities and the public law bodies. I think, again, it goes in line with who are our main target groups, so that's why they are granted the maximum rate. But the private non-profit bodies can still receive 70% of co-financing, which is still an important co-financing amount. And for the Norwegian partners, 50% co-financing is available. The Norwegian funding is also managed by the program directly, and maybe it's also the moment to mention that there's almost half of the Norwegian budget still available, so Norwegian partners are also encouraged to participate in the second call, and might be even interesting for them to make sure they are in the second call because we don't know what it will look like for, in the third call for them. But so make sure that you are in the second call to also benefit from this funding still. For the Swiss partners, we are not managing directly the funding, but funding can also be granted, I think, through the cantons and or the national level. So here we can only encourage people interested to get in touch directly with the national point of contact that you can also find on our website.
Thank you for explaining this. Petra, another really like common question we get very, very often is what is the typical budget? What is the average budget per project?
I think this question is so frequent because what we put in the program manual is a rather wide range. We wrote the average budget is between 1 and 2 million euro ERDF. I mean, it's half or double, so it's quite a big range. Now, thanks to the first call, we see what was actually the demand, and we observe that a realistic average budget is about 1.7 million euro ERDF. So that's what we have usually seen for a partnership of 7, 8, 9 partners. So now, thanks to the first call, we can be a bit more concrete because we have observed what the real demand is.
As we are talking now about the funding, maybe there is something else we need to keep in mind when it comes to finances, Petra?
Well, I think many of you are also interested when you apply to assess what does it mean later on when you have to claim for the funding. And I think for you it's important to have a quick overview what are the reporting rules for the budget and how to build the budget. And I think it might be interesting for you to know that we try to build as much as possible on the simplified cost options. So for preparation costs, there is a fixed lump sum allocated to it. It's 17,500 euro in total. The office and administration budget line is also represented through a flat rate. So on any staff costs that you are declaring, automatically 15% will be added to cover all your indirect office and administration costs. For travel, and that's the big novelty in the 21-27 period, we also make use and highly encourage every one of you to make use of this flat rate of 15% that functions in the same way for every staff cost reported. 15% travel cost flat rate is allocated. I think many of you might be aware, after having read the program manual, that for the travel costs there is a certain choice. It's still possible to go for the real cost option, but the experience from the first call shows that really 99% of the partners went for the flat rate. And first of all, I think people recognize that this is a huge simplification. It's really the end of declaring every little metro ticket and justifying everything. And also bear in mind that if anyone thinks he should still go for the real costs, then there must be a strong justification. And if we kept this option, we mainly kept it, for example, for the outermost regions that we have been talking about, where I think it's rather obvious that their travel costs might be slightly higher. But for everyone else, I can only highly recommend go for this 15% flat rate. Try something new and see. I think many people were skeptical for the office costs at the beginning, but then when they tried it, they saw the benefit of it, and we hope it will be the same with the 15% travel costs. For the other budget lines, it's much more difficult to standardize, so that's where we keep the real cost principle. So for the staff, it's still up to you to budget this, and that's where usually the majority of the budget, of course, goes, because we are a staff-intensive program. And external expertise and equipment, that then really depends on what you plan to do. And there's one last novelty, it's the infrastructure and works budget line. Sounds quite important, but in reality, it's only in very specific cases for those that plan to have a pilot action. So only for those this budget line is open, and it's only to do some complementary works when it comes to purchasing equipment.
Yeah.
So that's trying to give you an overview in a nutshell, and of course, if you have further questions, don't hesitate to come and see us at the stand.
And Petra, there are also good news that the program puts also an effort on simplification, right?
Exactly. We would really like that you can concentrate on the project content itself, concentrate on your partners and that the effort related to reporting is kept as little as possible, and also that we can accelerate, because we also don't give you any advance payments, so we are aware that it's important for you to be reimbursed as quickly as possible. And with this, we hope you can report faster, the controllers can check the expenditure faster, and then we can also pay out faster. So that's the aim behind it.
So now, as we are launching the second call, we indeed know that the first call was organized before. So maybe we could share some results of the first call.
Well, in the first call, we received 134 projects. That was a good amount of applications that we had received. And I think the very positive news from this is that 54% of the projects that had applied could actually be approved. So they were really of good quality. And I think this is really, should encourage all of you to actually apply and take your chance. 1 out of 2 has the according to the first call, had the potential to be approved and was approved. So,
yeah. And Nico, are there any other things to take into consideration or any lessons learned from the first call?
Yes, maybe I can refer more to the content of the application from now. I have selected 4 items, let's say, to pay particular attention to. The first one is the policy instrument, because it should be, in fact, the basis of your project. This is on that you're going to work during 3-4 years. So it's very important to be as clear as possible with the policy instruments that you would like to improve. We had some applications where sometimes 2 different instruments were described in the same section, or we had also, once we had an internal document of a university which was presented as a policy instrument. Although we are very open with this definition, this does not qualify as a policy instrument. And very important also, we had some policy instruments that were described as investment for jobs and growth program, although they were not. And this is an issue because, as you know, one of the requirements is to have at least one of this policy in the project. Another very important element for the eligibility is for you to check whether your organization or your partners can qualify as policy responsible authority. It's very clear for a city or for a regional council. For a development agency, for an environmental institute, it may be much more complicated to know whether or not this can be considered as a policy responsible authority. And there, I would like to highlight the importance of the national point of contact. We, at the GS, we cannot know the rules in every country, so only the national point of contact can confirm whether or not an organization can qualify as policy responsible authority for a specific policy instrument. I insist on these 2 elements because if there are issues with these questions in the application, you may not even go through the eligibility. And in this program, we are very strict. If you do not go through the eligibility, you're not even assessed qualitatively. So be very careful to these 2 points. When it comes to the quality has increased very much. Petra was mentioning 54% rate. I would just give you one example. In Interreg 4C first call, we received 498 applications. 42 were approved at the end. 8% success rate. Can you imagine? Well, so the quality is much better now. Still, we have a few issues. I'll give you just one example about the geographical coverage. You should be aware that the Transnational Mediterranean Program covers already 3 out of the 4 areas I've mentioned earlier. It covers, of course, the south of Europe. It also covers France, so the south of France, so west area, and it covers Slovenia and Bulgaria, which are in the east area. So already the MED partners, let's say, cover 3 out of our 4 areas. In other words, it's not because you fulfill these 4 areas that your partnership necessarily clearly go beyond transnational cooperation. And last, it's a bit less important because it may not lead to not recommending your projects, but you have to be careful with pilot actions. If they are not fully defined at the application stage, if you're not very clear with what you want to do with these pilot actions, it's better not to include them in the application form.
Thank you, Nico, for explaining this. We will take some questions from the audience about the finances. And someone is asking us, can a project budget include investments, Petra?
Well, the core part of the project is about exchanging of experience. So usually there you do not have any investment at all. If at all we see some slight investments, bear in mind also the average budget of this program. If we see it at all, it's in the pilot action. And we clearly, it has to be borne in mind, it's a pilot action. So it's just an individual item here and there that you need to test something, test a policy, but it's really more, it's not an investment program, Interreg Europe, clearly. We have to say it as clearly as that.
Then another question related to the budget. I'm trying to see if we have more. Do we have the Swiss organizations? No, we don't have other questions related to the budget. Then we can take it after the next round. Then I would like to thank to you both for a while for presenting indeed the perspective on the Interreg Europe program on how to prepare for the call. But this morning we saw and you heard that in this audience we also have experienced partners. And yesterday the First Call project gathered here in Stockholm to get information from the Secretariat on how to implement their project applications. So those were the First Call approved projects. And I would like to invite two lead partners on this stage to share their experience from their own perspective, and we can see if there are any lessons to learn for all of us. So I'm inviting on the stage Giulia Bolini, Head of Coordination and Operational Manager Unit at the Center for Innovation and Economic Development in Emilia-Romagna region from Italy, who is a lead partner of my project. Warm welcome to Giulia. And another lead partner I would like to welcome on this stage is Hari Kusela, a project manager at the Regional Council of Päijät-Häme in Finland, representing our project Loti. Hello, Giulia. Hello, Hari. It's very nice to see you on the stage, and thanks for agreeing to share your experience. My first question to both of you is, what is your project about?
Shall I go first?
Yes.
So first of all, thank you for having me here. And by the way, the view from here is amazing. We really are a big community. So mine is about building an ecosystem that supports businesses, especially SMEs from sectors like automotive or nautical, to transition towards the aerospace economy, since their business model is currently challenged by primarily the switch towards electric mobility.
And Hari, what about you? What is your project about?
Thank you, Irma. Loti is about local or regional identity and industrial change. So how do we engage communities and draw the power of the communities in connection with the industrial transition or industrial change? So it's about people and communities first, and then the hard part is the industry, and the combination is Loti.
Giulia, how did you choose your project topic?
So firstly, we looked at our smart, regional smart specialization strategy, the one of Region Emilia-Romagna, to understand what the regional trajectories and priorities were. And then we try to analyze our local territory, which is Romagna, and within Romagna, the territory of the city of Forlì, to see what the gaps and the opportunities were to get in line with the vision that our region sets itself. And the aerospace economy is currently a priority for Region Emilia-Romagna, and in Forlì we do have several assets, including the University of Bologna that has a course on aerospace engineering, and so we thought that some elements, some bits and pieces of the ecosystem for an aerospace economy were there, and therefore we might as well join the Region Emilia-Romagna in its run towards becoming one of the leading regions in aerospace as well.
Indeed, one thing is to identify the topic you want to work on, but the second thing is to find the project partners. How did you find your project partners? How did you indeed convince them to be your project partners? And how long does it take indeed from the moment you find until the moment they sign really the contract that they really want to be your partner?
Right. So this was not our first rodeo, so we could rely on a quite large network of very active and committed organizations. I don't mean that we just resorted to old friends and people that we worked with from before, but we did ask them to put us in touch with other regions and entities that we were interested in because we analyzed how different regions around Europe were going about the aerospace. So we started from our network and asked people to put us in touch with people. Also, we researched a little bit which formal networks were already existing in Europe around the aerospace economy, as for instance the network Nereos. So we got in touch with their managing organizations, and that's how we started. And in terms of timing, some organizations are very lean, they take decision quickly. Other organizations, I don't mean only the academic ones, but others as well, they need to have their boards convene to take the decision, and that could easily take up to a month. So you really need to set aside the last month to make sure that you get everything signed. That would be more or less the time frame that I have in mind.
Harry, what about you? How many projects, how many partners are involved in your project, and how did you find them?
Well, we have 8 partners from 6 countries, and we have a very, very experienced partner in preparation of the project, and together we mapped our networks and reflected the project idea and taken into account the program manual, of course, and then we prepared kind of a elevator pitch, very passionate statement about our great idea. And then we chose like a short list of those partners who share this regional identity thing, regions that are very, well, they have a strong identity and they are also struggling or they have challenge in the industrial change sector. So we contacted them and tried to be passionate about our idea, and that was more or less about it.
Harry, you were successful with your project application, and that's why you are now here on the stage. I wonder if you used any of the assistant tools the Intra-Europe program is providing to prepare your project application.
Yes, most of them. The webinars were very good, and also we used the services of the policy learning platform, those very professional experts, to fine-tune our idea, because sometimes you get so in love with your idea that it's the best, the most brilliant one in the world, but you'd have to reflect it back towards the program manual and check it if is it policy proof, is it waterproof, is it like a policy instrument proof and all that, and you have to be both passionate and also objective, and that's maybe the one way to qualify the idea further.
What indeed I liked also about talking with you and preparing for this plenary session was that you told, I remember one message from your webinars, and it's that you need to read the program manual, and that's really a must. Julia, Julia, what about you? Did you make out of use of our project development resources?
Indeed, we did not check the idea with, during the pre-design consulting session. We used that before, but not this specific time. But we took a look at the community to see which ideas were posted to make sure that we were not competing against somebody having the same idea, but rather joined forces with them, if that was the case. We looked at past projects to see whether the topic had already been covered, and if so, if in the same way that we were thinking of. And we made use of the policy learning platform because there's a wealth of knowledge there, as it was pointed out before. So it really helps you clarify your ideas, not reinvent the wheel, and really add value to your proposal indeed. And of course, yes, do have somebody on your team that knows a program manual by heart almost, because you will need that to keep you and your partners in check and make sure that your proposal get through all the steps of assessment that I believe Nico was mentioning before.
Thank you very much. We heard about the community, we heard about the webinars, we heard about the policy learning platform resources, the program manual. Nico, Petra, are there any other resources to help to prepare the application?
There are a lot of resources available. If you come to the content of the project ID, maybe I would mention the two most important services. The first one is a self-assessment tool. It's very easy, but you know this program is quite specific, has a specific rationale. It will help you very quickly to see whether you fulfill the core program requirements, the core program elements, and it's very easy to use on the website. Then, as soon as you have a more mature project ID, you know more or less a partnership, you know the policy instruments, there's a very nice tool which is a project ID feedback form that you need to fill in on the website, and then you can submit it to us, to the Joint Secretariat directly, and we will do our best to get back to you quickly to get a bit information whether you go in the right direction or which area you should be careful about, what should be improved. This can be also very helpful before applying.
And Petra, for you, any of the tools you want to highlight?
Well, I think in any case, it's always good to have a good look at the website. There are already today some video tutorials available, some recordings of past webinars, and then also, of course, for the second call, we will organize, again, regular question and answer sessions where you can really bring forward the questions you will have, and people from the JS will be available to answer them. And I think it's at the end of today, it's also foreseen to give you an overview about the exact dates when these sessions gonna happen. So stay tuned on our website to be informed and wait for the end of today to learn the exact dates and further news.
Good. Let's have a look now if we have any questions from the audience. I'm excited to see. Yes, we have some questions, and one question is, what is the timing for the second call approval and the start of the second call project, if approved?
Well, that's a good question. Of course, it depends on also on how many applications we're going to receive. Is it hopefully not the 400 applications we had last time. Then if it's a similar amount like in the first call, then we think it should be possible to have a decision on the projects by the end of the year, so that then the projects could start at the beginning of next year.
Yes, another very good question. Again, looking forward, if we don't have time to prepare the project now, when is the third call scheduled? Nico, maybe you know.
Only the member states will know. We'll have to decide on this, but the rhythm of the program is quite the same. We try to organize the call in the first semester of the year, so if everything goes as planned, I think we would have a similar timing than the second call. It should be launched maybe in the spring of next year, 2024, submission before summer. That's more or less what we envisage, but of course the member states will have to decide finally on this.
And as I mentioned already, from the 230 million euro still available, an envelope of 130 million euro have been dedicated to the second call approximately. So there should normally be some funding remaining for a third call, and maybe, if all goes well, even then with this enlarged geographical coverage.
But still, if you already have your project idea, if you already have the project partners, there's still enough time to prepare, hopefully, to prepare the project application within the second call deadline. It's only today we are opening the call. Yes, this is a very nice indeed audience we have, and we talked about what tips we have to share with the audience. We also have a poll on the Slido open, and everyone from you can contribute and tell if you have any other tips to share with the others on how to prepare a successful application, because we know that in this audience there are more even lead partners from our approved projects that they have experience and they managed to get their project approved. So please share your tips on the Slido. And now the last question we take, and we can see already some tips coming. I think we will look to in this. I will read the last question we have on the Slido. If your project is rejected, can you reapply with the same consortium and application and just improve according the rejection cause? Nico.
So there are nothing preventing a rejected application from being resubmitted, that's for sure. Now, what worries me a bit on the question is with the same consortium, because the main source of rejection comes from the partnership very often. Usually you receive the full quality assessment if it was eligible. The best advice is to look very carefully at this quality assessment because everything is there. But very often, to have a chance to be recommended and approved, usually the lead partner, the lead applicant will have to rework on its partnership.
Thank you, Nico. We start the last round of questions, and all of my speakers will contribute, and the audience I see is already doing that, sending the tips on how to prepare a successful project application. I will ask now each of you to give your tip and to share with the audience. Harry, you start.
Okay, thanks. Just a small tip. I'm a person, maybe you also, a person who's almost chronically late every time, almost. And my tip is what to do is what I do at home. I have a clock on my wall, clock on my car, wrist on my watch. I close my eyes and put the time a bit forward so that I don't know how many minutes it's ahead. And I recommend the same tip with you, the application. Imagine that you're already late, or almost late, and deceive yourself that the deadline is sooner than it is, because whatever happens is usually negative in terms of time. So be in time, be on time, and do it well beforehand. Deceive yourself in the timetable thing.
Julia?
My suggestion would be to start with a clear and strong project concept in mind if you're planning to be a lead partner. That doesn't mean that you will not have to negotiate with the other prospect partners. You will have to. Most probably, they will bring value to the table, and you will be welcoming it and thanking those people for bringing such value. But you need to stay true to your original idea because it stemmed from needs and opportunities that you scouted on your territory. And if you don't do that, and even if you get the project approved, you will struggle to deliver. And even if you brought money back home, your stakeholders will be disappointed. So stay true to your needs and opportunities that you put at the core of your original idea.
Nico, what tip you could give?
I think the advice were already extremely good from the lead partner side. If I would have to select something, I repeat myself for the last 20 years, it's perhaps to make your application unique. And what does that mean to make your application unique is to be as specific as possible in the application form. And what does it mean? It means that you need to work very closely with your partners before. You need to understand the policy instrument they want to address. You need to give details on these policy instruments, on the needs of your partners. And this, hopefully, should make your application unique at the end. So it can be clear also for the assessors that it answers to a real need of the territories.
What about you, Petra? It's really the last tip.
Well, I would first of all say have a careful look at what is appearing on the screen because the best tips are already there. If I had to select one, I would say be selective when you choose your partners. Make sure you have a wide geographical coverage and make sure you have the policy responsible authorities on board, either directly or through the associated authority status.
Yes. Thank you very much to my dear speakers for your input and for sharing tips. And they will be there during this event. If you have more questions, you can meet Nico, Petra at the Interreg Europe corner. And also Julie and Harry will be there around. So if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask. You can identify other Interreg Europe co-finance projects, as there is a project title identified on the badge. So don't hesitate to talk with them as well. Thank you very much once more. And now, as we are almost ready for the lunch, there are a few important points of attention. After lunch at 14, we start our afternoon program, which you already designed, and if not, you should design one, according to your needs and wishes. And what are the options? Let me present those. Networking tables will be running there, and your and our event participants, you will be discussing future project ideas. And I could see that there are many interesting conversations on mobility, climate, policy, energy communities, circular governments, just some to mention, and all information about it, it's on our event website. At the networking tab, you can find and see at which hour, at which table those conversations are happening, and you can join them. Interreg Europe Secretariat will be at the dedicated space for individual consultations and ad hoc meetings. There are many of you who signed for the individual consultations. The ones who did not manage to get an appointment, Interreg Europe staff members will be present at the corner. There you will be also meeting our policy learning platform colleagues and can get your questions answered about the policy learning platform. For the ones who signed for the study visits organized by our policy learning platform, a short reminder that the meeting point is at the networking area at 13:45. So with this, I am sure that you will have a great time and exchanges this afternoon, and I will be waiting for you at 5 o'clock here in this hall for the closing session. And you will hear again the music. And after this, we will have some conclusions, and then we will finish our program with a networking cocktail served at 5:30. With this, even more opportunities will come for informal chats and networking. And now it's time to wish to all of you a nice lunch break.
Are you a policymaker? Are you looking for new solutions in your region? Are you interested in learning from other European regions facing similar challenges?
With Interreg Europe, you can develop your interregional cooperation project and get co-financing from the European Union. You can team up with other regions in Europe, exchange your experience, and improve your regional development policies.
It's about the policy learning platform, a fantastic tool to meet new people and to find solutions for your regions.
At Interreg Europe, we help regions from across Europe to develop and deliver better policies by sharing solutions. You can work on any topic of the EU policy agenda by making Europe greener, smarter, more social, better connected, better governed, or closer to citizens.
It's a program for regions and by regions. Use the opportunities we offer.